Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. And got a little bit of problems here with my computer, but we'll be trying to work on that and get that fixed here so I could actually see something that's going on here. Yes, sir. I'm sorry here. I've just got a black screen here, Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel Weber is my guest today, and your organization, please give us that information here while I'm trying to get my screen to working.
Thank you, Clay. It's great to be on your show. We're from AMAC, which is the Association of Mature American Citizens. We're the conservative alternative to AARP. We've been around for 5 years, and now we're just reaching about 200,000 paid members and looking for more.
Wonderful. Again, I had your whole website up here, and it may still be here now. I'm starting to get some stuff back here. But tell me why you started this.
Sure.
I've dropped my membership in AARP because, frankly, I don't think they were doing anything for the older folks and the people. And they were supporting, were they supporting Obama's medical plan?
Clay, they not only supported it, but they backed it fully with the full force of their clout. They got over 20 million members, and they pressured Congress into supporting all of the Obamacare provisions, some of which are dastardly deeds. But they never polled their members. Had they polled their own members, they would have found out 85% of seniors were happy or very happy with their medical care. After all, Clay, we've got the greatest medical care system in the world. Why would you want to socialize it? Why would you want to have the government take it over?
Well, you know, why is I volunteered for Vietnam in 1964 in February.
God bless you.
And I didn't have to go, fortunately, but I did read the Constitution that I swore an oath to defend. And I also read every plank on the Communist Manifesto is intact in America today. Why is nobody telling us that?
Yeah, and one part of the Communist Manifesto is the breakdown of the family. And people don't know this, Clay. You and I do, but maybe we can, educate your listening audience. The Communist Manifesto actually is anti-family. It criticizes the family unit. It says the father is the king, the mother and the kids are the slaves, and therefore the family itself is not the right unit. We need to have a community raise the children. Haven't we heard that before?
You know, in one way, the only thing that I really agree with Hillary Clinton on sometimes is that it takes a village. And I have proposed the idea of liberty villages, of people actually working together in a cooperative effort to restore the family farm, which was once, forever, it's been the basis of every civilization, the self-sufficient family farm.
Yep. And we may need that again, Clay, the way this nation is headed, with our economy going down the tubes.
We sent all of our productivity overseas, so we could get so the industrialists could get cheaper labor. We got the whole free trade is a whole scam. I mean, the government's only true source of income is tariffs, and they've eliminated that.
Yep, it's a shame that they tax us, and they tax us while we're living, they tax us while we're retiring, and they tax us after we're dead.
That's right, and you can lose the family farm if you don't pay the inheritance tax from dying.
Yeah.
But again,
that's death tax.
That's
exactly.
only,
if we don't pay the death tax, then we get in trouble.
And well, that kind of fits in with plank number 1 of the Communist Manifesto: abolition of private property.
Yep. And
number 3, abolition of all rights of inheritance.
Yeah.
The state knows best.
Yeah.
Now you've got 200,000 members.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty amazing. You've only been in operation for what?
2007 is when we started. However, only about 2 years ago we went national, and that's when we started to grow like crazy.
What? Give me some comparisons here. Now, I don't believe the AARP told anybody about Ron Paul. Ron Paul was a subscriber of mine to the Free American Magazine for 10 years, and I'm kind of proud of the work that he's done.
Yeah.
But
he stands for a lot of things that I'm for, less government. I disagree with him on some of his foreign policy issues. Like, he favors Iran getting the atomic bomb, and I think that's suicide. But other than that, I think it's, he's got some good points. Otherwise, he wouldn't have all those people following him.
That's right. He does. He does. I agree that having 400 nuclear weapons in the hands of a foreign country that's threatened or bragged that they could hit every capital in Europe. Yeah. I consider that to be certainly an issue that Ron Paul's not particularly dealing with.
Right, exactly.
Because that one country happens to have a little bit of influence on the American government.
Unfortunately, yes.
I'm sorry, folks. I mean, I eat beef too, so I don't have any sacred cows.
I like the sound of that.
And folks, this ain't a religious issue in my mind. This is not a religious issue, because our Constitution gives you the right to worship any way you want, man. If you want to go bang your head against the wall, you can do that. You want to stick your nose in the sand, your ass up in the air, I'll even try to keep the Saint Bernard away from you.
Yeah.
But and you wanna pray for Cadillac men, just knock yourself out. The Constitution covers you. Just don't try to force me to get down on my knees with you. I'm not going to do that.
Exactly, right. Now, you know what upsets me, Clay? When my kids graduated from high school, we've got 5 children. The first few kids, when they graduated, they had a local minister or priest say some prayers at the graduation, blessing the young people going out into the world. And then when my youngest son graduated, they didn't have the minister, the priest, or anybody. And I asked the vice principal, I said, don't we have a benediction? And he said, oh, we're not allowed to do that anymore. And I said, what do you mean we're not allowed to do it? He said, yeah, he said, that's separation of church and state. I said, well, it seems to me the Constitution reads that we can practice our religion. It doesn't say we can't practice it. We're not forcing people to do anything. We're not making the kids recite a prayer. We're just asking the Almighty's blessing on the people. And he said, oh, we can't do that. And that's a shame. Slowly we're losing our right to practice religion. You know, they used to teach a course in the Air Force War College on the justification of war. You know, in religion, a just war, and actually would quote things out of the Bible. Well, under the Obama administration, they said that they couldn't do that, that was mixing religion and church. So I say, well, that's not mixing, it's explaining. It's, you know, these guys are going to send people to their death. They should have a clear moral understanding. I mean, after all, our morals are what the country's basic legal system is based on. Now, you take England, for example, Clay. What do you think about those riots over there in England?
I think that's a forerunner of what's happening here. I think, you know, that's what happens when you force this kind of integration, you know, and when, you know, we have over 60,000 Americans that have been murdered at the hands of illegal aliens.
Yeah.
You know, so the same thing's happening in America. I mean, and you know, we form Homeland Security with these detention centers. We assume that's for illegals. However, 700,000 of them marched in the streets of L.A. last year, and not one was picked up.
Yeah. And Clay, do you know that we lose more young Americans and more young people in America are killed in gang violence? If you take the number of youths killed in gang violence since the beginning of the Iraq War, it's triple the number of soldiers who have died overseas fighting for our country. So all these hypocrites that say, oh, we can't have wars overseas, we're killing our young people, they're ignoring the gang warfare that's going on in many of our cities today.
Now, let me touch on another killer in the United States, and this one's right up your alley, and mine. I mean, I'm 65. I'm turning 65. I'm actually getting a little bit of dental work done, courtesy of Social Security, and I really appreciate that. And but I went through a motorcycle accident a number of years ago, and when the motorcycle accident failed to kill me, I swear to God that the hospitals tried to do it for them. I was kept unconscious. I was kept drugged into oblivion. Halcyon, Haldol, Valium, morphine, for 3 months in 3 different hospitals.
Wow. And
when I got off of it, I was up and walking and talking and doing pretty good. You know, had to carry my coffee cup in my right hand because I had 3 broken ribs. But they kept me unconscious for 3 months, ran up a $750,000 hospital bill before I was on Social Security.
Wow.
And I've done story after story after story on this show about people like Paul Pantone being drugged or incarcerated, put in a mental institution for 3.5 years because he wouldn't turn over a patent to an energy device. I just did a story on Donna Taylor's son, Mark, who they came through to Tucson to see me and went to a hospital in an emergency room in this is the first child shot at Columbine, and so he still got complications, but he was also an activist against the drug companies, and they tried to incarcerate him and keep him for a year and ran up another hospital bill. We have no idea how much that's even totaled. I had to get lawyers and help get her out. My question to you is, how is your organization, AMAC, going to deal with the pharmaceutical companies? Now, these pharmaceutical companies, I've got a list here of how much of the markup on their drugs is. It's in the thousands of percent. 3,000% markup for Valium. My mother and grandmother were drug addicts, and I had no idea until I turned about 22 and happened to take one of my grandmother's Reds.
Yep.
And wow, I thought you were just feeble, you know. I thought you were just old and feeble. I didn't know you were, you know, drugged out on Reds. But
Isn't that terrible?
how is your organization going to deal with that?
Okay, well, first of all, here's what we think about the drugs. I actually did a study on drugs and the history of drugs. And did you know that before World War II, if you got ill, the chances are you would die. They did not have anything that cured any illness before World War II, other than amputation. And then, as you know, penicillin came along.
The one thing I'm allergic to, the one thing in my life I'm allergic to.
Well, penicillin saved 200 million people in the last, well, since it's been heavily merchandised, and you know, during the war. If they didn't have penicillin, our casualties would have been a lot higher. You know, there used to be, you remember the Woolworth stores, Clay? F.W. Woolworth, the 5 and 10s?
Yes.
Okay, at that time, in the 1930s, Woolworth was the richest man in the world. He was like Bill Gates is today. He got a tooth infection, and they didn't have penicillin, and he died of a tooth infection in his 40s. He was in his 46, 45-year-old bracket, and he died of an infection. The President Harding's son was 16 years old. They had a tennis court set up in the White House. He used to like to play tennis barefoot. He got his foot infected. He died of a foot infection. People used to drop like flies because of an infection. And it was only through the miracle of penicillin and all the other, you know, amoxicillin and, you know, all the variations that they have, that people started to get being cured. Now, the professor from Princeton University that helped discover the mass production method, you know, we know the fellow over in England discovered penicillin, but nobody could make it on a mass production. And the fellow in Princeton University, he donated the patent. Isn't that nice? He donated the patent so that people could mass produce it. And in Brooklyn, New York, there was a company called Merck, and it was a small pharmaceutical outfit, and they invested their whole company trying to find ways of mass producing penicillin, and they were successful. You know, we used to manufacture things in America, Clay, that's a whole other story. But right. At that time, America was basically the doctor for the world, because we found out a way to mass produce it. And that's why Merck grew into the giant drug company that it grew into. Now we get into today's modern drugs. Okay, so I think the idea of a drug company, you need them. I don't know, are you on any medication yourself, Clay?
I smoke a little pot.
I don't mean that stuff, I mean the other stuff.
Which was, by the way, our #1 cash crop in America before they demonized hemp and turned it into marijuana, and now it's growing we got 10,000 products made out. We got to buy it from Red China. But no, I don't take any type of pharmaceuticals. You're lucky, because I got an irregular heartbeat, and I've had it for about 20 years, and about 15 years ago it got so bad I couldn't even climb a flight of stairs. Not only that, people with atrial fibrillation like I have, we got like a 10 times greater chance of getting a stroke, because the heart's not pumping. It's just like a regular mechanical pump. If you don't pump regular, it coagulates and it jams up the works, and that's what causes a stroke. So then they come out with Coumadin, which is a blood thinner, and because of that, I haven't had a stroke. I had a doctor who used to not like to prescribe drugs, and he said after 6 months on Coumadin, I would be fine. Well, I was on it 6 months. I said, "Doctor, I want to come off it." He said, "I just got back from a seminar," and he said, "They showed me proof pudding that you got a 10 times greater chance of dying of a stroke if you aren't on a blood thinner." So I said, "Who sponsored it? A drug company?" He said, No, the medical association did." I said, "Well, okay," and he kept me on Coumadin. I've been on it for 20 years. But in addition to that, they got me on 2 other medicines that help slow down the heartbeat, because it goes very, very fast, very, very slow, and you try to move around. You try to go for a walk when your heart is going crazy 1 minute and then hardly moves another minute. So these drugs that I'm taking, I'm able to golf, I'm able to walk. This morning I was out building a dock in a lake, and I couldn't do that if it wasn't for the drugs. Now,
Then we get into, okay, what's their profit margin? And their profit margin is shockingly high, as you said, Clay. Now, what do they do with the money? Well, here's what I found out. You may not like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to tell you what I found out.
Okay.
I found out that the majority of the money that they earned went into research. The second large portion went to pay the stockholders. So then I looked in and I said, well, who's the biggest stockholders? You know, which millionaires and billionaires? Well, years ago, you know, Standard Oil was owned by Rockefeller. Years ago, DuPont owned all these chemical and TV sets and everything. And there were mega millionaires owned by one person. Well, today, because of the way the economy works, they sell stock to the public. And today, the biggest owner of the pharmaceutical companies, over 85%, some are 90%, are what they call institutional investors. In other words, where is the profit from the drug companies going? And guess who the institutional investors are? The state pension plan system. California state pension system is the biggest institutional investor in the country. Then it's followed by New York, Texas, Massachusetts, all these other states that, you know, they cover the pensions of all the state and city and county and municipal workers. They're the biggest owner of the pharmaceutical companies. Then comes the 401ks, and then comes people's IRAs. So it can actually be said, I mean, we complain about the profits that they make, but it can actually be said that the profits are shared by the majority of people that own stocks. I don't know if you own any. I got a couple mutual funds.
I don't. I have a few shares of Harley Davidson, so I can get into these stockholders meetings.
That's a heck of a good stock to own, I'll tell you that.
And that's my only transportation right at the moment.
I don't mean to change the subject, Clay, but I read something about Harley Davidson owners, and I was shocked.
What's that?
And you know what they said about it? That of all the classes of people who write and read poetry, okay, Harley Davidson owners are some of the largest percentage of people that are devoted to poetry. I was shocked. I could not believe it. Whoever, you know, one of the universities did one of those crazy studies, and they found out that a lot of people who are poets and they write poetry and they read poetry, a lot of those folks own Harley Davidsons. And I said, I'll be gosh darn.
I am a poet. I wrote the song that you heard at the beginning of the thing here.
Kidding.
Yes, sir. And matter of fact, I did all well, a friend of mine put the music to it, but I wrote all the lyrics to all of the songs that we're going to put in the next movie that I make. But
that is so. Then there is you. That.
Well, yeah, and you know, not only that. I mean, to me, that's the Harley is just the freedom. You know, that's the challenge. I mean, I'm today's cowboy. I even ride, you know, and I'm a Texan in exile in Arizona, and I still ride with a cowboy hat, not a helmet.
Yep.
That's why I don't live in California.
Well, somebody told me.
Let me ask you about to get back into this government thing. Now you pointed out an interesting point about the pharmaceutical companies, and you know, but you also brought up Morgan, and who basically crushed Tesla to keep us from having free energy. You know how you know you're building a device, you know, that can transmit power. Where do we put the meter? Where do we put the meter?
Yeah.
And DuPont is the reason. DuPont and Mellon, DuPont's banker, kicked money back to William Randolph Hearst to demonize the hemp crops, because that was Hearst's biggest competitor too. Before 100 years of Encyclopedia Britannica was printed on hemp.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, just like the media controlled the robber barons controlled the media back in those days, and now the socialists control the media today.
They've always been the same thing. The whole thing, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. As far as I'm concerned, that's the oldest tactic in warfare: divide and conquer. You're pro-abortion. Well, you think you're pro-choice. You know, it's dividing. You find the smallest issue that somebody can disagree with, and you incorporate it in one of the parties, and you fund both sides: the socialists, you know, and the communists. You know, the communist, the fascist. That's two wings of the same bird, and it's the same thing as the Republicans and Democrats, in my opinion. And that bird is a global vulture. It ain't an eagle.
Yeah. Well, I can't argue with some of the points you're making.
Now, what about the banks? Now, Ron Paul is the only congressman and the only man running for president that has called for an audit of the Fed. And they've actually done an audit of the Fed and found out that they sent over $16 trillion of our money to foreign banks. And we've got in our country here, the latest figures I've got are that we are sending foreign aid to 150 countries, including Red China, including Israel.
And Egypt.
And Libya. I mean, my God, how much did we sell?
There's a civil war going on there. That doesn't make sense to me. When there's people in America that could use help.
Absolutely. And this, when Bush walked out of office, he handed the banksters $2 trillion. If he had handed that $2 trillion to the homeowners in America, 1 million Americans wouldn't have lost their homes.
Not only that.
The money would have gone back to the bankers.
Clay, are you collecting Social Security, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Or maybe you're not collecting it yet.
Well, I'm collecting it. I'm on Social Security, and thanks for the new false teeth that they're going to give me. Thank you.
Okay. Well, here's the thing with Social Security. Now, 1 out of 3 people that collect Social Security have to pay tax on their Social Security. I don't know if you go over your income tax, but generally speaking, if a person's on a pension or they have a job while they're collecting Social Security, I'm not talking about they get less amount. I'm talking about they actually pay income tax on part of their Social Security. Now, Roosevelt, he was against that. He said when people are retired, they shouldn't have to pay any tax on their Social Security. Why? Because it was already taxed. That's after-tax money that goes into our Social Security. And AARP, which is supposed to be looking out for older Americans, hasn't done a darn thing about that. And that's one of the big pushes that AMAC is behind. We think it's terrible to tax people on Social Security. And you know what they use as a factor? $34,000 if you're an individual, file individually, and your combined income is over $34,000, including half of your Social Security, then you got to pay tax on half of your Social Security. If you have a married couple, a double exemption, then your household income, if it's over $44,000, your combined income, you got to pay a tax on your Social Security, and that amounts to between $1,800 and $3,000 per household. Now, just take that a minute, Clay. What you said about the stimulus, if you let all the folks on Social Security, instead of paying a tax, 1 out of 3 of us pay a tax, let that money, give it back to the people, that'd be a tremendous stimulus in the economy. It'd be $20 billion back into the economy. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to put it into wasted government projects? No. They're going to use it to buy things they need around the house. And that would really stimulate the economy. But as you said, you pointed it out, they give the money to the banks instead of the people.
It's as far as I can see, it's simply exactly. I think the Jewish crook that got off with everybody's money said it was a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. And well, the Ponzi scheme is the banks with these derivatives. There's $600 trillion in derivatives. And what they did after President Obama became president with Secretary Gaitner, everything was heading down the tubes because all these banks had this collateral backed by these derivatives, and it was worthless. So what they did to settle it is all the governments got together and said, we're going to honor your debt. Like, for example, Germany said to England, we're going to honor the money in the Bank of England, and we're